Let us start off the session by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. All right. Mala is getting all the spotlight today. Oh, now let's start. Good. So we are starting off with the third chapter of the Abhidhamma Sangha today. You might, because we went through such amount of revision and sort of going through the Chittas and the Chaitasikas, you might come across certain questions actually that some of you were grilled on pertaining to this chapter. So now you will find out that I was cheating a bit. So anyways, we will go on, we will start. And this chapter shouldn't be too much, but what this chapter does is it goes into detail about where specifically the consciousness belong into, right? In terms of, you will see in terms of a number of different categories where the different the chittas belong to. So this will be focusing specifically on the chittas. So we will start. So page number 114. Good. So let us get some. Hemamali, can you read please the first paragraph? Hold on, Hemamali, you must unmute yourself first.
Having explained accordingly the 53 associated states, consciousness and mental factors with respect to their intrinsic nature, now taking consciousness alone, we will deal concisely with its classification by way of feelings, roots, functions, doors, objects and bases.
Continue.
The 53 associated states. Though 89 or 121 types of consciousnesses are recognized in the Abhidhamma, these are treated collectively as a single Dhamma or reality because they all have the same characteristic, namely the cognizing of an object.
Malik,
however, yeah.
Hold on. So now from this you will find what this means is, now remember, Chittas 81, 89, 121, Chaitasikas 52, Rupas 28, Nibbana 1, right? In certain places you will find consciousness to be sort of mentioned as one. So when you see that one, you must remember this sentence, right? Why is that? Why is that? Because collectively as a single Dhamma or reality, because they all have the same characteristic, right? The same characteristic, meaning they all do cognize an object. That is why it is, so that is in terms of characteristic that it is spoken of. So do not get confused when you see the number one in front of consciousness. Hey Mali, continue please.
However, the 52 Chaitasikas are considered to be each separate reality because they all have different characteristics. Thus, there are altogether 53 associated mental phenomena.
Thank you, Mali. Now, what does that mean? Different characteristic. Remember, Chanda, when you take desire does something completely different to Virya. right? It brings a completely different essence into the mixture of Chitra and Chetasika. But when you would take consciousness, consciousness would just cognize an object, right? It would just cognize the object. It is the Chetasikas that bring that difference, right? The way that it is maneuvered and all of that, the difference is in the Chetasikas, but in terms of the Chitta, it is only the process of cognizing the object. Thank you. All right. So taking consciousness alone, right? The Pali term Chittupada literally means an arising of consciousness. In other contexts, it implies the Chitta together with its collective Chetasikas. But here, it denotes Chitta itself, right? Nevertheless, it should be understood that consciousness always occurs in indissoluble union with its Chetasikas. So that cannot be broken. It will always have that union with the Chetasikas, which often form the basis for its analysis and classification, right? Okay. Padma, could you read the other part? Padma, you must unmute yourself.
Okay, so we come to the compendium of feeling,
Yes.
and this analysis of feeling. In the compendium of feeling, there are first three kinds of feeling, namely pleasant, painful, and that which is neither painful nor pleasant. Again, feeling is analyzed as fivefold: pleasure, pain, joy, displeasure, and equanimity.
We have gone over that many times, right? But now we go into, let's see, right? Yes, Padma, continue.
Analysis of feeling. As we have seen, feeling, Vedana, is a universal mental factor. The Chetasika with the function of experiencing the flavor of the object. Since some sort of feeling accompanies every Chitta, feeling serves as an important variable in terms of which consciousness can be classified. In this section, the author's main concern is to classify the totality of Chittas by way of their concomitant feeling. Okay? Yeah.
Please continue.
Carry on. Continue.
Yes, please, Padma.
Three kinds of feeling. Feeling may be analyzed as either threefold or fivefold. When it's analyzed simply in terms of its affective quality, it is threefold: pleasant, painful, and neither painful nor pleasant. In this threefold classification, pleasant feeling includes both bodily pleasure and mental pleasure or joy, and painful feeling includes both bodily pain and mental pain or displeasure. Now, feeling...
Padma, give me a moment, please. Now, please do not confuse yourself by how it says bodily feeling and mental feeling. Remember, it is talking about the base of its arising. Right? Now, for example, if the consciousness is no longer, the body will not be feeling anything. Right? We are talking about the base that is important to note. Where does the pain arise? Where does the pleasure arise? Now, for example, you could think of something that happened maybe a month ago, or a vacation that you went a couple of years last year or so, and that makes you happy. Now, that is a mental feeling, right? Now, where does the bodily feeling, when you're meditating, the aches and pains and all of that? Now, that is a bodily feeling. But remember, this is a consciousness. This consciousness is dealing with now a pain or a pleasure arising from one of the doors. That is very important to understand, right? Because sometimes people understand, okay, when you say bodily feeling, okay, this is the body. No, this is not the body. This is the mind taking an object from one of the 5 sensory doors, right? Please continue, Padma.
Feeling is analyzed as fivefold. When feeling is analyzed by way of the governing faculty, Indriya, it becomes fivefold. These 5 types of feelings are called faculties because they exercise lordship or control, indra, over the associated states with respect to the affective mode of experiencing the sub-object.
Okay, please continue.
When the fivefold analysis of feeling is considered, the pleasant feeling of the threefold scheme becomes divided into pleasure and joy, the former bodily and the latter mental. The painful feeling of the threefold scheme becomes divided into pain and displeasure, again the former bodily and the latter mental, and neither painful nor pleasant feeling becomes identified with equanimity or neutral feeling.
Correct. Wonderful. Yeah. Please continue.
In the suttas, the Buddha sometimes also speaks of feeling as twofold: pleasure, sukha, and pain, dukkha. This is a loose or metaphorical method of analysis, arrived at by merging the blameless neutral feeling in pleasure and the blameworthy neutral feeling in pain. The Buddha further declares that whatever is felt is included in suffering. Yam kinsi veda yitam. In this statement, the word dukkha does not bear the narrow meaning of painful feeling, but the broader meaning of suffering inherent in all conditioned things by reason of their impermanence.
Yes, that is quite clear. This is something that we have gone over again and again, right? This is something that we have gone over again and again. But I think an important point to note is a point which was made regarding the Buddha referring to just 2 types of Vedana, which should be noted as something which is again in a very relaxed or very loose sense. But we do find, for example, in the sutras, we find the Vedanas spoken about in the threefold manner. In the Abhidhamma, we find it spoken of in the fivefold manner. That is important to realize. Right. Please go on, Padma.
Pleasure, sukha, has the characteristic of experiencing a desirable, tangible object, the function of intensifying associated states, manifestation as bodily enjoyment, and its proximate cause is the body faculty.
Yeah.
Then pain, dukkha, has the characteristic of experiencing an undesirable tangible object, the function of withering associated states, manifestation as bodily affliction, and its proximate cause is also the body faculty.
All right. Now understand when it says the proximate cause, meaning now, I don't know if some of you know the meaning or some of you might not. Proximal, it is because of this that pain arises, right? What is the near cause, right, of pain? Proximate is near, right? So the near cause of that pain sensation or the pleasure is both, now you find, is that body faculty, right? Now I wanted to also bring your attention to, right, the function in pleasure. It says the function of intensifying associated states. Right, now that is important to note. How does it intensify? Because of its quality, the quality of grabbing hold, the quality of liking something, the quality of wanting to bring something closer to you or your life, intensifying the associated mental states, right? In the pain, this is the act of pushing away, right? The act of pushing away. Now there are, in the sukha, where we try to bring this object closer, in pain we try to sort of push it away, right, to get rid of something, right? So it doesn't intensify our agitation with the object, rather it intensifies with us wanting to be whatever we were before that object arose, right? So we do not find that intensifying factor or the intensifying of associated states, as it is mentioned in pleasure, in pain. Understood?
Yeah. Okay.
Right? All right. Please go ahead.
Joy, somanassa, has the characteristic of experiencing a desirable object, the function of partaking of the desirable aspect of the object, manifestation as mental enjoyment, and its proximate cause is tranquility. Now, displeasure, domanassa, has the characteristic of experiencing an undesirable object, the function of partaking of the undesirable aspect of the object, manifestation as mental affliction, and its proximate cause is the heart base. Then equanimity, upekkha, has the characteristic of being felt as neutral, the function of neither intensifying nor withering associated states, manifestation as peacefulness, and its proximate cause is consciousness without zest.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you, Padma. Now, so that is quite clear. We have gone through this, right? Now, you find with regards to joy, displeasure, right? And then equanimity, the proximate cause is now a bit different, right? Whereas in sukha and dukkha, we found that the body faculty was its proximate cause. Saying what this says is, this is with regards to whatever experience of emotion relating to pleasure or pain that arises through the body do, right? Now, with regards to joy, we find its proximate cause is tranquility, right? The experience of which brings this feeling to heart, brings this sort of experience, enables for this experience to arise. This is going to be clearer when we do chittaviti, when we understand the course of the consciousness, what arises specifically before this consciousness, right? That is when it is going to be clearer for you to understand, okay, how does it happen that because of tranquility this arises? Because it is not an abrupt process, isn't it? Each and every consciousness which arises leads to or paves way for another to arise, right? Another to arise. You're going to understand that process in the Chittaviti chapter, but because there is some sort of tranquility, now this is specifically relating to, of course, the Chetasika, which allows this experience to arise. Now, this pleasure has the proximate cause of the heart base, right? Proximate cause of the heart base. Now, here we can't find the footer. Are the footers in the last, at the end of the page?
No, I don't think there are.
It says 2 and 3. The footers are there. Okay, anyways.
Says it in the notes, the end.
The end, yes.
Take the notes, yeah.
What does, Miri, do you have are you at the notes now?
Yeah, it says, so it says, where it says about tranquility,
Okay.
it talks about tranquility or passaddhi, it seems, is the proximate cause only for the joyful feeling that arises in meditative development.
Yeah.
And then for 2, which is heart base, they say on heart base, see below for, you know, that other thing, 20, it says. So somewhere else, can't see what that is. Yeah, there's 20. Must be later on in the chapter, Bhante.
It's page 144. There's something about that 20. I'm not sure.
Yes, 144, that's right. So it says, here it talks about, where it says analysis of bases. It's in the summary of bases, there are 6 bases, namely the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and heart base. And then about the heart base, at the bottom of the page, it says, according to the Pali commentators, the heart serves as the physical support for all chittas.
All right, thank you, Miri.
And so on.
So now here the heart base is referring to the mind, right? So Hadevattu, right? So the heart base referring to the sort of the seat of mind, as they call it. I've spoken of it before, I think, already with you, where it says that the mind associates or arises associating a deep-seated sort of thick blood located deep within the heart, which currently we do not have scientific evidence regarding. I think it's a big question mark whether of course they are clear on the fact that the mind is not in the brain, but they are now sort of dribbling between the heart and the gut. So let's see where we end up with research, but it's referring to the mind over there. And then in Upekha, we have the proximate cause, that is the consciousness without zest, right? So moving on. So Miri, can you read for us, Miri? Starting from of them.
Yes, so this is classification by way of consciousness. Of them, wholesome resultant body consciousness is the only one accompanied by pleasure. Similarly, unwholesome resultant body consciousness is the only one accompanied by pain. There are 62 kinds of consciousness accompanied by joy.
Okay.
Namely, yeah. Shall I carry on? Or?
Please wait. Now, it should be clear to you now with the revision that we have done. Now there is no spoon feeding anymore, right? So you have to, so I hope that all of you get the point, isn't it? Of then the wholesome resultant body consciousness taking us to the Ahetuka, right? There you find the body there, and then with pleasure, which is in the wholesome, and then the pain, you find it in the unwholesome resultant, right? So when you're going through, make sure you make that note, okay? So when you're reading, when every one of you are following along, make that note. Please continue, Miri.
There are 62 kinds of consciousness accompanied by joy, namely 18 types of sense sphere consciousness, 4 rooted in greed, 12 types of sense sphere beautiful consciousness, the 2 rootless types, that is the joyful, investigating and smiling consciousness. So that will be 4 plus 12 plus 2. Yeah. And then 44 types of sublime and supramundane consciousness pertaining to the first, second, third, and fourth jhanas. And only the 2 types of consciousness connected with aversion are accompanied by displeasure. All the remaining 55 types of consciousness are accompanied by equanimity.
We are quite proficient in this part, I hope now, because we have done this revision, right? So please carry on, Miri.
Okay, so the remaining 55, those chittas accompanied by equanimity are the 6 unwholesome chittas, 4 rooted in greed, 2 in delusion, 14 rootless chittas, 12 sense sphere beautiful chittas, that is 4 each wholesome, resultant and functional, and then 3 chittas of the 5th jhana, 12 chittas of the immaterial jhanas, and 8 supramundane chittas, that is the paths and fruits pertaining to the 5th supramundane jhana.
Wonderful. Please continue.
So in summary, feeling therein is threefold, namely pleasure, pain, and equanimity. Together with joy and displeasure, it is 5-fold. Pleasure and pain are each found in 1, displeasure in 2, joy in 62, and the remaining, that is equanimity, in 55.
Wonderful. Yeah. Now this is feeling. All right. So with regards to Abhidhamma, what we require to know with regards to feeling, we have done now, right? So then what do you need to know? We need to know the reasons behind the threefold and the fivefold. We need to know the consciousnesses that arise associating or by spirit of these feelings, right? And what those consciousnesses entail gives you what these feelings bring into our life if you go into greater detail, right? So we have now covered feeling, right? Make sure now within this chapter, because there are it's a lot of like notes really. You know, you will find it's a lot of pointers and notes with regards to these different things that we cover, right? Damsir, do you have a question?
Yes.
Yes. So hold on, Namsari. So make sure that you, as we go on, you make or take, mark on your books. Don't be afraid of sort of messing up your book. Just mark on your book, because these things you will come to revisit later, right? Make sure that you are sort of clear, because as we move forward, although this seems like something which is not so important, something that but remember that these little pointers creates or changes the structure in the future. Meaning you have to know these certain points which allows one to sort of know the answers for different sort of Abhidhamma questions in the future. And also with regards to, for example, Abhidhamma books such as the Yamaka, the Dhamma Sangani, where Dhamma Sangani not a lot, but there are certain parts with regards to feelings. Now, books such as that Yamaka, if you're not very clear on the feelings or these little pointers and parts, it's very difficult to sort of understand the twin formulas, right? So remember, get it right. Mark on your book. Don't be hesitant. Just mark on your books. Go crazy with your highlighters and make sure you get the right notes. All right. Damsiri, yes? Damsiri?
I have a small question.
Yes, Damsiri.
Can you hear?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. When it comes to feeling as a Chaitasika, we said it is a mere what is the word? Feeling is just experiencing the object. All right, its function is experience of objects. So when it comes to Chaitasika, we didn't say that we have a feeling of happiness or joy or any details.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now when you are talking about feeling here,
Yeah.
now we elaborate into these 3 and 5 levels of feeling. Now the reason behind is that in this particular case, are we talking about the feeling of consciousness as such? That means all 53 dharmas or realities.
Yes. So, Damsiri,
Yeah.
it's like this. Now, for example, if this hand is the Vedana, Chaitasika, I touch the bottle, right?
Yeah.
I'm touching the phone, right?
Yeah.
This hand has no bias or prejudice.
Yes.
That is the Chaitasika.
Yeah.
With regards to this chapter, as it was mentioned in the beginning, we are talking specifically with regards to the categories, with respect to the categories.
Okay.
The categories brought within all the categories that the consciousnesses fall into.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the Chaitasika function, as you correctly mentioned, it is experiencing the object. Whether the object be pleasant or unpleasant, whether it will kill you or whether it is something which really enlightens you, it does not matter. With the Vedana Chetasika, all it does is experience the object to the level that it is sort of presented to the five sensory doors, the heart base, or whatever it is. So we are specifically talking about the categories here.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Miri, can you please continue?
Okay, so pleasure and pain are each found in one. It should be noted that while the four pairs of sense consciousness, other than body consciousness, are accompanied by equanimous feeling, body consciousness arises in connection with either pleasure or pain. The Attasalini explains that in the case of the four doors, eye, ear, nose, and tongue, the sense object, which is derived matter, impinges on the sense faculty, which is also derived matter.
All right, please pause, Miri. Did all of you get that?
No.
Can we read it again, Miri, from the beginning?
Right. So pleasure and pain are each found in one. It should be noted that while the four pairs of sense consciousness, other than body consciousness, are accompanied by equanimous feeling, body consciousness arises in connection with either pleasure or pain.
Pause, Miri. What is this referring to? Can someone tell me? This is
the ahetuka, the rootless ones.
Body consciousness, nothing else.
Yeah.
Right? Because that is the only body consciousness we have, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? This is referring to just the ahetuka. What these, while the four pairs of sense consciousness other than the body consciousness, what is that referring to? The four pairs of sense consciousness other than the body. Right? That's what it's referring to, which belongs to Pekka and all of those other things. Right? Which has, not all those other things, which belong to Pekka. Right? So, please continue, Miri.
The Attasalini explains that in the case of the four doors, eye, ear, nose, and tongue, the sense object, which is derived matter, impinges on the sense faculty, which is also derived matter.
Yeah.
When this happens, the impact is not strong, as when four balls of cotton placed on anvils are struck by four other balls of cotton. Thus, the resulting feeling is neutral. But in the case of the body, the object consists of three of the primary elements: earth, fire, and air. Thus, when the object impinges on body sensitivity, its impact is strong and is conveyed to the primary elements of the body. This is comparable to four balls of cotton being struck by hammers. The hammer breaks through the cotton and hits the anvil. In the case of a desirable object, the body consciousness is a wholesome resultant, and the concomitant bodily feelings is physical pleasure. In the case of an undesirable object, the body consciousness is an unwholesome resultant, and the concomitant bodily feeling is physical pain.
All right. Now, is that clear? Right? Because of the strength of the, not the strength really, because of the predominant nature being supported through the amount of elements existing within whatever physical touch which falls upon the body, the impingement is much greater. Now, this will be further explained. I wonder whether it is in this chapter. But when we come to Mahantarammana, Ati Mahantarammana, Vitikama, the sort of the power of the objects, right? The power of the object. But let me also remind you that the ego is always stronger than the body and the objects concerned in the body. Right? Sometimes we know, we have heard all the sayings which says, the body will heal, but the mind is difficult to recover, isn't it? Right? So that is the part that the ego plays, but this is specifically referring to, now, for example, you're looking at something, you're looking at a movie, right? And then there's a large sound, or your husband or partner taps you on your back, or, sort of disturbs you. The movie might be amazing, you might be really attached to the movie, but then at the moment that that person is tapping on you or whatnot, you'll be disturbed. Why is that? Because more than the sensory object of the movie, the physical touch is more powerful. This is relating to the impingement more than anything else, remember. Now, what Miri just read for us from the book, this is referring to the impingement, right? Not to say that the object is whatever or whatever. The object which collides with the body, that's power is stronger than the eye, ear, nose, and the tongue, right? That is what it means. Please continue.
So though it may seem that pleasure and pain also accompany the other four kinds of sense consciousness, the Abhidhamma maintains that the immediate moment of sense consciousness in these cases is necessarily accompanied by neutral feeling.
All right.
Yeah.
Though it may seem that pleasure and pain also accompany the other four kinds of sense consciousness, though it may seem, the Abhidhamma maintains that the immediate moment of sense consciousness in these cases is necessarily accompanied by neutral feeling. Can someone explain that to me?
Is that also the rootless chittas? Where they just come and it comes through the doors, those four doors, and it either comes through them, and it's just neutral at the time of impingement, isn't it? And it's only afterwards that we, get
it is after the sort of the evaluation of the object is done that we clearly know what it actually is. Right, what it actually is. But also remember now, what does now, if you go back to our study of Ahetuka, try to remember Ahetuka. We had the kusala, rootless kusala vipaka, akusala vipaka, and the kiriya, or the functional, right? Now, the vipaka, the resultant, being kusala or akusala, regardless, we had the four consciousnesses. Now, when I say four consciousnesses, it is all the sense, four senses, all senses excluding body. The four senses had upekka, right? But this regardless of the kusala vipaka or akusala vipaka. This is because kusala or akusala at the time of cognition, you don't know. Why? It is but the body, you know. Because it is either pleasure or pain. Why? Again, the previous paragraph. The body is more powerful. That impingement is harder. Right? There you know. The eye, nose, tongue, all of that, the four senses is determined later on. Right? So the Abhidhamma goes into the specifics of saying that, or maintaining that the immediate moment of the sense consciousness in the case is, of course, neutral feeling. Remember, due to our ignorance in whatever level, even if it is a akusala vipaka, right? Even if it is a akusala vipaka, we sometimes associate those kinds of feelings or whatever or experiences as something which is good. Are you with me?
No.
Although it might be a kusala vipaka or a akusala vipaka, or a wholesome resultant or an unwholesome resultant with regards to the four sense consciousnesses, we might take it as something which is pleasant. we could take something which is akusala, unwholesome, resultant, rootless, as something which is good for you. I mean, for example, think about this. All these people who drink alcohol, right? I mean, alcohol has no benefits, right? It has no benefits, but we drink it. You might drink it. Right? Now, something like that. There are no benefits whatsoever, but we sometimes take it in a certain way. Sugar, for example, similar, right? Something of to a dog or cat, these days even dogs and cats are a bit posh, but to those normal dogs and cats, feces is something which might be pleasant for them, right? Now, but as a consciousness or as nature goes, it is something which is or falls under the purpose of or under the result of akusala vipaka, even for a dog or cat, right? Even for a dog or cat, it is, although the physical attributes or rather the reason for its arising might be kusala or akusala resultant, that does not specifically affect our association with the object. Because why? It's ahetuka, it's very sort of difficult, it's very, not difficult, it's very sort of weak. So we sort of oversee it most of the time, right? We oversee it most of the time, right? Please continue, Miri.
In the Javana phase, belonging to the same cognitive process as the moment of sense consciousness, and in subsequent mind door processors taking the same object, mental pleasure, that is somanassa or joy, may arise towards an agreeable sight, sound, smell, or taste. Mental pain, that is domanassa or displeasure, may arise towards a disagreeable sight, etc. And equanimity or neutral feeling, upekha, may arise towards an object regarded with indifference or detachment. These, however, are mental feelings rather than physical feelings, and they arise subsequent to the moment of bare sense consciousness, rather than in immediate association with the bare sense consciousness. As they occur in the Javana phase, these feelings are associated with wholesome or unwholesome consciousness, or in the case of the joy and equanimity experienced by arahants, with functional consciousness.
Understood? Is that clear? Anyone who has a doubt with regards to that? However, mental feelings rather than physical feelings, and they arise subsequently to the moment of bare sense consciousness rather than in immediate association with the bare sense consciousness. As they occur in the Javana phase, these feelings are associated with wholesome or unwholesome consciousnesses, or in the case of joy and equanimity experienced by Arahant with functional consciousnesses, right? With functional consciousness. The Arahants, when it comes to Arahants, we know the experience of joy and equanimity are different to the experience of joy and equanimity that we experience, right? We know for the basic reasons of the lack of attachment to these in the sense of the akusalas working, it does not happen in that way, right? Now, does anyone have any questions?
Bhante, can I ask something? Bhante, can I ask something, please?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. What do you mean by when you say the Javana phase? And when you say now, first of all, there is no sense of, whether it's painful or not. So, and the point that when you investigate it, is at the point of the investigating consciousness at that time, is it that you say that because if you're just seeing or something, then you don't know this good or bad, but then is it after receiving and investigating that you have whether it's good or bad?
So this is, okay, we are not going to spend much time on this because this is a whole section altogether, which we are going to come into. The jhana phase is where we sort of, it is like the kneading of the dough, right? It is where you sort of create karma. It is where the actual work is done, right? Getting to know of the object and all of that, the work, the sort of the interlinking between the you and the object happens during this process of jhana, which allows karma to be created. That is what it is referring to here, right? But if you are confused, let us go through that paragraph again. Though it may seem that pleasure and pain also accompany the other four kinds of sense consciousness, the Abhidhamma maintains that the immediate moment of sense consciousness in these cases is necessarily accompanied by neutral feeling. That is clear, right? That is clear. The moment that we cognize them, they are all neutral feeling except the body. The body is more powerful.
Then after that,
Hold on.
Then
hold on. So, in the jhana phase, belonging to the same cognitive process as the moment of sense consciousness. In the jhana phase, belonging to the same cognitive process as the moment of sense consciousness, right? This is referring to the chitta viti, which would arise at the moment that same sort of process would impinge or is carried out in mind, right? Now, remember, some of you might not know in a chitta viti that, for example, the I consciousness would arise before the jhana process. You don't know this, that's all right, right? That is why we will come to this, revisit this in the future when it comes to that specific chapter, right? But let us go on. In the jhana phase, belonging to the same cognitive process as the moment of sense consciousness, and in the subsequent mind or processes taking the same object. What does this mean? Now, for example, I see the bottle. Now, seeing the bottle is not enough. No? I need to comprehend, is there enough water? Is the sort of the where I keep my mouth clean? Or, do I need to wash the bottle? Do I need to, all of these other things. Does the bottle look clean? All of these things, we do not cognize this in one chitta viti. It takes a couple. For example, now you are all very familiar to me, right? But now, for example, when I am looking at you all, depending, first I will take the light in, then it's another process to remember your name. It's another process to remember the form. All of these sort of, we have to go through all of these sort of evaluation processes, which will enable me to know, okay, this is this person, this is this person is not there. Or it doesn't happen in one stream of consciousness. It takes a couple of consciousnesses, right? It takes a couple of consciousnesses, right? So, now that is what it is, that is what is being said here. And in the subsequent mind or process taking the same object, meaning the subsequent mind or processes which will help me to know, for example, Dhamsiri is Dhamsiri, Hemala is Hemali, Mala is Mala. All this is evaluating the subsequent mind processes which should arise to know the object better, right? Then, mental pleasure, subsequent mind process, taking the same object, mental pleasure may arise towards an agreeable sight, sound, smell, or taste. Mental pain may arise towards an disagreeable sight, etc. And equanimity or neutral feeling may arise towards an object regarded with indifference or detachment. These however, are mental feelings rather than physical feelings. Now, this is what I mentioned, remember, when I just mentioned at the beginning, when we first came into the chapter, when we were evaluating the different types of feeling, and they used the word bodily feeling and mental feeling, I told you, remember, although they say it's mental body feeling, this is not body feeling in that sort of way. This is derived through that door. That is what is being mentioned here. You get it, right? That is what they are saying again, or rather they didn't say it in the beginning, they're saying it now. This is all to do with that sort of mind, right? And they arise subsequent to the moment of bare sense consciousness, rather than in immediate association with the bare sense consciousness, meaning it doesn't arise in the same viti. After that, with the processes going on, then you get that sense, right? Because there needs to be a number of processes which goes on allowing for recognition to happen in a proper manner. For example, even the color white, if you look at the wall, I mean, we think it's just a snap, you know what it is. No, but it takes a process of recognition to happen, to go through, right? That is how we know that something is that. Yes, Dil.
So that means that this moment, that when it's neutral, cognizing, so that's when you cognize, when you see. So then you have this receiving and investigation. Even at that point, you don't, it's only when it becomes a mind door and manodwara that you actually, at that point that you feel whether it's pleasure or pain. Is that what you mean?
No, the feel happens in the javana.
So that javana is after the Sampaditthana and Sankirtana, after that in the mind.
That has to be gone through in the process. We have to see the Chittaviti, right? We have to see the Chittaviti. The receiving, of course, the Sampaditthana Sankirtana will happen before that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It happens before that and then after the mind, right?
Because, that is the process of the mind getting that object.
Yeah. So this Javana and the needing comes after that, when it comes to the mind and when it's a manodwara. So those things happen before and then. So you
will discuss that, Dil, because we have not come to that chapter now.
Okay.
Right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So
thank you.
Yes. So we will come to that point where we discuss the Chittaviti, so then that everyone then understands, what is this process that we are talking about. All right, which I think is the next chapter. Right.
Thank you.
So then it is quite clear, I hope now, right? We will just finish. These, however, are mental feelings rather than physical feelings, and they arise subsequent to the moment of bare sense consciousness rather than immediate association with the bare sense consciousness. As they occur in the Javana phase, these feelings are associated with wholesome or unwholesome consciousness, or in the case of joy and equanimity experienced by Arhat, it is a functional consciousness. Now that is clear. Right? Got it, everyone? Good. Hetu. Mala, can you read for us? Thank you, Mihiri. Thank you for reading for us. Compendium of Roots.
Compendium of Roots. In the Compendium of Roots, there are 6 roots, namely greed, hatred, delusion, non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. Analysis of roots. In this section, all types of consciousness are classified by way of their concomitant hetu or roots. In the sutras, the word hetu is used in the general sense of cause or reason or karana. There it is synonymous with the word pachaya, condition, with which it is often conjoined, and it applies to any phenomenon that functions as a cause or reason for other things. In the Abhidhamma, however, hetu is used exclusively in the specialized area of root or mula, and it is restricted in application to 6 mental factors representing ethically significant qualities. Formally defined, a root is a mental factor which establishes firmness and stability in the chittas and cetasikas with which it is associated. For it is said that those chittas that possess roots are firm and stable like trees, while those that are rootless are weak and unstable like moss. Of the 6 roots enumerated in the text, 3, greed, hatred, and delusion, are exclusively unwholesome, while 3, non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion, may be either wholesome or indeterminate.
Yes, thank you,
They
Mark.
are wholesome. Yeah.
A moment, please.
Yes.
Now, please understand, it is very important that you understand this, regardless of whatever it is that you would believe. Regardless of whether the person is Buddhist, non-Buddhist, coming from whatever culture, religion, whatever it is, the roots do not change. Why? That is what it talks about. It is exclusive because the essence and the result of these roots are the same, and they are exclusive regardless of whatever other factors. That is why if it is now, we know people who take some sort of pleasure in inflicting pain, right? We know these individuals, I mean, not personally, but we know that this is a state that people often sort of get themselves in. Now, do not be confused. This is a state, that is a state of delusion. This is a state of exclusive nature, right? You must understand the sort of the association of delusion and the way that it creates a sort of misunderstanding or misrepresentation of consciousness due to that delusion, right? That needs to be understood. So with regards to whatever pain or whatever, if it is an unwholesome root, it is going to create something which is akusala bound. Never is it going to create something which is kusala. You will come through now, for example, in the Patthana, we speak about, this is just for, FYI, for your knowledge. We speak about, akusala pachaya. Based on akusala, kusala arises. Let me give you an example of that, because of akusala, kusala arises. Actually, can you give me an example? Everyone knows this. It's just that you have maybe not, but anyone wants to try? Example. You're an alcoholic, right? Seeing what alcoholism has created for yourself or your family, you start practicing Dhamma, right? So that is then seen as, that is a very sort of gross example, that is something like that. Because of akusala, then sort of kusala rises. Now, for example, something which we find in the sutras is dukkha upanishaya shraddha, right? Dukkha upanishaya shraddha, the faith that arises having suffering as its base or its proximate cause, right? Now, for example, we say, it is only when someone dies or, someone goes through suffering that you remember the religion. The Buddha says, yes, of course. Why else do we need to remember the religion? It is because of suffering, and that is seen by the Buddha, as said by the Buddha, and that is a pertinent reason for Shraddha to arise, because of suffering, seeing suffering, right? That is also an example of how, because of akusala, kusala rises. All right, understood? Please go on, Mala.
They are wholesome when they arise in wholesome chittas and indeterminate when they arise in resultant and functional chittas. In either case, whether wholesome or indeterminate, these three roots are beautiful or sobhana chetasikas.
Go on, Mala.
Classification by way of consciousness. Therein, 18 types of consciousness are without roots, namely, five-door adverting, the two sets of five-fold sense consciousness, receiving, investigating, determining, and smiling. All the remaining 71 types of consciousness are with roots. Of them, the two types of consciousness associated with sheer delusion have only one root. The remaining 10 unwholesome types of consciousness are the 12 sense sphere beautiful types of consciousness dissociated from knowledge, thus totaling 22 are with two roots. The 12 sense sphere beautiful types of consciousness associated with knowledge and the 35 sublime and supramundane type of consciousness, thus totaling 47 are with three roots.
I hope you all remember that, yeah?
Yeah.
You can all calculate that as well now.
Yeah.
Please go on, Mala.
Yeah. The remaining 10 unwholesome types of consciousness, the 8 chittas accompanied by greed, have greed and delusion as root. The 2 chittas accompanied by aversion have hatred and delusion as roots. The 12 dissociated from knowledge, these sense sphere beautiful chittas, 4 each wholesome, resultant, and functional, are conditioned by non-greed and non-hatred. Non-delusion is excluded because they are dissociated from knowledge.
Got that? Everyone understands that? There is no reason for us to go into that. Yeah? All right. Please go ahead.
47 with 3 rules. These chittas are conditioned by the 3 beautiful rules. Summary: greed, hatred, and delusion are the 3 unwholesome rules. Non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion are the 3 roots that are wholesome and indeterminate. It should be understood that 18 types of consciousness are without roots, 2 with 1 root, 22 with 2 roots, and 47 with 3 roots.
All right. Please go ahead. Let's go.
Okay.
Mala, I think we will pause there. Right. Thank you very much for reading. Maybe there's something we'll go on. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mala. Who's going to read? Dil, can you read for us?
Okay, Bhante. So page 122 at the top, Compendium of Functions. In the Compendium of Functions, there are 14 functions, namely 1. Rebirth linking, 2. Life continuum, 3. Adverting, 4. Seeing, 5. Hearing, 6. Smelling, 7. Tasting, 8. Touching, 9. Receiving, 10. Investigating, 11. Determining, 12. Javana, 13. Registration, and 14. Death. Their further classification should be understood by way of stage as tenfold, namely 1. Rebirth linking, 2. Life continuum, 3. Adverting, 4. Five-fold sense consciousness, and so forth.
Is that clear, everyone? When you look at all the 81, 121 consciousnesses, in terms of function, they do one of these 40, right? They are part of actually one or more, right, of these 40, right? So Let us go ahead. Let us go ahead.
Analysis of functions. In this section, the 89 types of consciousness are classified by way of function. The Abhidhamma posits altogether 14 functions performed by different kinds of consciousness. These are exercised either at distinct phases within the cognitive process or on occasions when consciousness is occurring outside the precognitive process, that is, in the process feed, which is the Vitimutta consciousness.
Yes. Please remember that word, process freed. We'll come to visit that later on. Right? Vitimutta. Right? Please go on.
Rebirth linking, the Patisandhi. This function exercised at conception is called rebirth linking because it links the new existence to the previous one. The consciousness that performs this function, the Patisandhi Chitta, or the rebirth linking consciousness, occurs only once in any individual existence at the moment of rebirth.
That is clear to everyone, right? Rebirth linking, right? That is clear to everyone. Please go on.
2. Life continuum or bhavanga. The word bhavanga means factor, anga of existence, bhava, that is, the indispensable condition of existence. Bhavanga is a function of consciousness by which the continuity of the individual is preserved through the duration of any single existence, from conception to death. After the Patisandhi Chitta has arisen and fallen away, it is then followed by the Bhavanga Chitta, which is the resultant consciousness of the same type as the Patisandhi Chitta, but which performs a different function, namely the function of preserving the continuity of the individual existence. Bhavanga Chittas arise and pass away every moment during life, whenever there is no active cognitive processes taking place. This type of consciousness is most evident during deep, dreamless sleep, but it also occurs momentarily during waking life countless times, between occasions of active cognition. When an object impinges on a sense door, the bhavanga is arrested and an active cognitive process ensues for the purpose of cognizing the object. Immediately after the cognitive process is completed, again the bhavanga supervenes and continues until the next cognitive process arises. Arising and perishing at every moment during this passive phase of consciousness, the bhavanga flows on like a stream without remaining static for 2 consecutive moments. 3. Adverting the avajjana. When an object impinges at one of the sense doors or at the mind door, there occurs a mind moment called bhavanga chalana, vibration of the life continuum, by which the bhavanga consciousness vibrates for a single moment. This is followed by another moment called the bhavanga upacheda, the arrest of the life continuum, by which the flow of the bhavanga is cut off. Immediately after this, a chitta arises, turning to the object, either at one of the 5 physical sense doors or at the mind door. This function of turning to the object is termed adverting. 4 to 8, seeing, etc. In a cognitive process at the sense doors, after the moment of adverting.
All right, Jill. Yes, thank you. Now,
thank you, Bhante.
The Bhavanga, now we will be revisiting the Bhavanga, right? There are moments when, for example, there is something called Agantuka Bhavanga or guest Bhavanga, where, for example, when the shift between heavier emotions, heavier emotion-based consciousnesses must or happen, and there needs to be a shift which has to arise into more calmer consciousness. Right? Now, let us say, if we would take an example, let's say you're at a Bodhi puja, right? And your grandson or your son is sort of, nudging about, or, and you sort of, tell him to be quiet or something, which is a static shift from calm to angry, and then you must get back to sort of calming down again. In situations like that bhavanga we say agantaka bhavanga. The agantaka bhavanga helps in that sort of shift, in that sort of maneuvering yourself back to a wholly different sort of consciousness type. Do you get it? Right? We will discuss about it in the Chittaviti chapter. In the Chittaviti chapter, the bhavanga, when it arises after a process of consciousness, meaning a Chittaviti, will vibrate for twice, and another Chittaviti will arise. So there are two bhavangas before or between each Chittaviti, right? Which again we will discuss in detail when we come to the chapter. Then we have avajana. Do we have any questions regarding bhavanga? No? Okay. So then we have avajana. Now, avajana is now adverting, is now when we usually take the example of a person who is sleeping, right? You are in deep sleep, right? You are in deep sleep. The alarm is ringing, right? Or the alarm has started ringing. Now, from the time that your sleep is disturbed to the time that you awaken, there is a process. For example, now, bhavanga chalana, that is the first Pali word that we see there, okay? Bhavanga chalana. Chalana is what? Chalana is like, it's like the shaking of, this water, right? It's that vibrating, right? It's that vibrating, right? The vibration of the life continuum. It's now is not completely sort of rattled off, but it sort of is shaking. It's disturbed. Your sleep is disturbed by the alarm, right? Now, for example, now let's say you have a partner who snores, right? Or who moves around the bed too often. I see people smiling. Yes, those annoying people that you're forced to sleep with. Right? What happens now, although you might not wake up, these sort of sounds or movements, right, creates a chalana, right? But you might not really sort of notice it if the chalana doesn't come up to the upacheda or the cutting off, or what is the word which is used here? The
rest of the life continue.
Yes. So it might not sort of, or if the chalana, if it does not come to the upacheda or the arresting, you might not wake up at all. You might even not even know, or it might not even disturb you. But the mind, the flow is somewhat disturbed, right? The flow is somewhat disturbed. We will come on to that, of course. Then we have the bhavanga upacheda. The bhavanga upacheda is where it is completely it is cut off from the bhavanga, right? Remember, this process happens every time. For example, even between, for example, you are looking at me and, I have facial expressions, hand movements and gestures, all of these different things. Moment to moment, every moment this upacheda is happening because it is breaking away from one to go on to the other, breaking from one to go on to the other, right? But we like to use the example of sleep because it is much clearer in that sense, right? So we will come back to adverting and how it sort of happens in that specific process in the chapter of Chittaviti. Dil, would you please continue?
Okay, so this is 4 to 8. Seeing, etc. In a cognitive process at the sense doors, after the moment of adverting,
Dil,
like,
so 4 to 8, if we is seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching, right? So that is what it is. Please go ahead, Dil.
Right. Thank you, Bhante. In a cognitive process at the sense doors, after the moment of adverting, there arises a chitta, which directly cognizes the impingement object. This chitta and the specific function it performs is determined by the nature of the object. If the object is a visible form, eye consciousness arises seeing it. But if it is a sound, ear consciousness arises hearing it, and so forth. In this context, the functions of seeing and hearing, etc., do not refer to the cognitive acts which explicitly identify the objects of sight and hearing, etc. As such, they signify rather the rudimentary, momentary occasions of consciousness by which the sense datum is experienced in its bare immediacy and simplicity prior to all identificatory cognitive operations.
Wonderful. Do we understand? Any questions on that part? If anyone has a question, please do not feel inferior saying, I don't it is only me, all of that. No, we don't take any of that. Please tell me. If you don't understand, Bhante, I don't understand, right? So, so it's 8:23. Does anyone have any questions as to what we have completed today?
Bhante, can I just ask something, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is not this particular chapter, but whether you asked us a question about whether any of us could give an example of where an akusala could turn into a kusala. Can you remember? And you were referring to about an alcoholic, right, with the suffering. So this is this what all in secular teachings of consciousness and secular teachings of about mindfulness and all the rest of it that science is no form, is this what they refer to when they talk about transcendence? For example, say long time ago, Deepak Chopra was talking about using the Vedanta principles. He was talking about in this transcendence, he was in how you can make the grievous to a miracle. So at that time, when I first studied many years ago, I couldn't understand. But subsequently, people started talking about transcendence. So in other words, this is when sometimes when you're in the, say you get, somebody gets an awful illness like cancer, right? And the doctors have said that you can't, or you're dying, or you're suffering, or you're in so much of pain, like in pancreatic cancer. And then suddenly through all this pain, somewhere deep down, you touch something that really there is some other than responding with fear and rejecting all this, somewhere deep within you, something touches you, and in some moment of clarity, you accept and you surrender.
So,
and then
please, what is the question?
So is that what you said when you said? So is that transcendence? So like what you said, with suffering?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Transcendence. Now there are three types of transcendence, right? Which is ego transcendence, self transcendence, and I think spiritual transcendence. There are three.
Right. Right.
Ego transcendence. Now the word transcendence or the philosophy of transcendence is specifically something of Western application to Eastern philosophy.
Right. Thank you, man.
Starting from Brahmanism, Hinduism, going down into Buddhism. Catholics may try to sort of also speak about transcendence in their spiritual sort of practices, because Catholics, Christians also do have sort of the meditative sort of devices that they would use. The Muslims also do have this sort of this I forget the Muslim meditative tradition name, but they also do have this. So transcendence is of three types: ego, self, and spiritual. The spiritual transcendence refers to transcendence beyond space and time, which I like to say could be something which is nirvana, but is also not, because transcendence, or the word transcendence, sort of gives a sense that we transcend from somewhere to somewhere else. And in Nibbana, you do not you vanish. It's a sense of absolutely becoming nothing, not even air, right? So, but we do have that sense. Now, ego transcendence, beyond ego, is of course where prajna and all of these things lead to, right? Self transcendence is of course getting rid of the self, that notion, arahanthood, right? So when we do go through the processes with regards to Buddhism, ego transcendence and self transcendence seems to happen much rather together for us if we are going down to the sense of, or if we are speaking with relation to achievements and attainments of sainthood, right? But if we are speaking about general practice, of course, you might have been a mean person who does not understand or does not give other people below one's the time of day, but now through Dhamma you have found more compassionate ways of living, and you have realized your sort of toxic mentalities, and you have gone beyond that. That would apply to ego transcendence. Realizing the aspect of non-self with regards to all of these things. You are not so attached to your partners. Now you enjoy each other much more, because you're not that, you don't have that weak attachment anymore. Now that is more of self-transcendence, right? So, and of course in Buddhism, we can sort of speak about transcendence in that way, for sure. But I would say that we go far and beyond the sort of the Western ideology or the usage of the word transcendence, for sure.
Right? They are really going on now to nothingness, which is also seamless, limitless, but they are still going from something to something. Thank you, Bhante. You made it very clear.
Also, in the sense of, I think it is important to understand when we hear the word spiritual used in the West, no one really knows what spirituality is. Right? It is like those people who were in the shore, who did not have ships, looking to the horizon and thinking that the earth was like a roti, right? No one really knows, for example, and I would say that is somewhat, true, because in many ways, and we should maintain that, because for example, now if you all remember the time that all of you became mothers, that is surely an experience that changed you, right? It is becoming a mother, meaning the moment of giving birth was significantly an experience that changed you compared to the experience of actually carrying the baby in your womb, right? That is an experience that changed you. Now that is a spiritual experience, being a person who has experienced someone else's compassion is something which might have changed you at some point in your life. That is why they can't sort of relate to an experience to say, oh, this is spirituality is this. No, spirituality is different for different people, different for different people. Sometimes food is something which is of a spiritual experience for people. Sometimes their exercises are sometimes something which is spiritual. For some people, their work that they're really passionate about is something that they're spiritual about. So it is quite different for different people, and we need to sort of accept that part. So we have come to the end of today's session. Do we have any other questions?
Yes.
Yes, Mala. Pushpa, yes.
Yeah.
Pushpa first, yeah.
Shall I ask, or is Mala going to ask?
Go ahead, Pushpa.
Yeah. Bhante, I tried to buy the book online. Only used copies are available.
Yeah.
But because of the COVID, I'm a bit worried about buying used copies. Is there any place that you know where I could buy the new book?
Well, you could ask a friend from Sri Lanka to get a copy from the Buddhist Publication Center and post it over to you.
In near Kalubovila, is that the one?
You can buy it at Nadimala, you can buy it at Tumulla. If you have someone in Kandy, they can buy it in Kandy. They will actually also post it out to them as well, you know. So, you know, they don't need to touch the book. But in any way, so someone is going to touch it somewhere.
Yeah, that's it.
So maybe you can buy a used copy and leave it out in the sun.
Yeah, leave it for 2 weeks. We'll have to leave it out for 2 weeks.
Oh, wash it.
Sorry. Huh?
Or you can spray some disinfectant, wash it, you know.
Yeah.
Or you can, you know, how the sort of the original Bible is treated. You can sort of hold it with gloves. All right, Pushpa. I hope you managed.
Only I could get it down only from Sri Lanka, isn't it?
I mean, that is where it is printed. So it would be Sri Lanka, or you order, but at the end of the day, someone is going to touch it, Pushpa. Someone.
Yeah.
It,
you can disinfect the book.
Regardless of it being, you know.
Yeah. So Nadimala or Tumulla, isn't it?
How do you manage groceries? Do you wash all?
But using a book.
Because I have a friend in Sri Lanka who washes all, you know, gets the maids to wash all the groceries. All right. Mala, yes, what is your question, Mala?
Bhante, I have got a question about the sense doors, about the body sense doors. It says, in case of the body, the object is one of the 3 primary elements: earth, fire, and air. Why don't they mention the 4th one? In most of the other places in the book, they always mention 3 and not 4.
Earth, fire, air. Earth, fire, air.
The fluid, the apo part?
Yes.
Apo, tejo, vaya.
Yes. So earth, fire, air. Now, the apo, probably because air and water share very similar qualities. So much so that air and water, it is very difficult to sort of disassociate between them. Right? To disassociate between them because their qualities are so similar. Right? So the air process, what we see now when we talk about touch, we specifically talk about earth, fire, and air because it is more of that we actually feel.
Right.
Because it is here, it's not about what's actually there. It is about what we feel.
Yeah.
Right? That is why it mentions earth, fire. But yes, as Mala said, all 4 elements are existent here in whatever sort of object. Right? Good. So any other questions? Quick question. Yeah.
Just one quick one. So Bhante, like what you were saying, that in Buddhist terms, this whole sense of the unconditioned, so that in these other things, whether it's Brahmanism or Vedanta or whatever, in those things, even in that last jhana, after the 4th jhana, when you go up to, you say neither perception nor non-perception. Or you say, like when we were doing the sutta that you were doing, they were talking about neither finite nor infinite. So all these people have come to some place, but for the Buddha, it's beyond that, where it's sort of with boundless or seamless. But in all these other things, Brahmanism things, they haven't been able to see beyond that. The final state that the Buddha saw when he realized, and like in the Bojjhangas, when you come up to equanimity, is that why they just say neither perception nor
yes, the meditative where because there was no path, which ended it all.
Yeah.
Right? It is to a certain level that we have meditative traditions going on to, right? Going on to. Also, if we sort of look at sort of the spiritual hermit traditions which were existent before the Buddha, all of them had to seclude from people to a great extent and survive on plants and all of these things, because of course their practices were so rigorous and difficult to manage with people. Vipassana, on the other hand, was something which was based wholly on reality, rather than a complete creation of a different cognitive science within yourself, right? So yes, so we would find Vipassana far sort of advanced. All right, wonderful. So any other questions, please ask on Monday. I will see you all day after tomorrow. Take care and goodbye. Right? Have a good rest of the evening.
Superb. Thank you.
Bye-bye.